My name's Claire Corbett. I am a registered nurse. I work with youth in low decile schools. I've always wanted to be a nurse. I'm pretty much living out what I want to do, and that's helping underprivileged children. I was actually a really accident-prone kid myself and spent a bit of time in hospital. When I was 9, I had a motorbike accident, and I spent a good couple of weeks in hospital. I actually had my spleen removed and that, and then a couple of years later I had another accident, spent a lot of time in Starship, and while I was there kind of just saw what the nurses did, and pretty much from that age decided that nursing's what I wanted to do. Why kids? So growing up, all the kind of jobs that I did, I was a swim teacher or I nannied, and I don't want to work with adults. At least with kids it's fun and you can have a bit of a laugh and stuff, and it's just more enjoyable, more rewarding. School nursing was never on my radar. Like Starship was always the dream for me. I was always kind of like, yep, Starship, and then I never expected to get Starship straight away, and then when I did get Starship I was kind of like it was great and I learned a lot, but I kind of was like, wow, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. So school nursing, I just took the first job that came up, and that was a low decile school, a decile 1 school. In Starship it's very medical task based, whereas a lot of the stuff that I was seeing once I got into the school was mental health, but also a lot of like basic issues, so like sore throats and stuff, not being treated due to like barriers of like, not being able to afford to go to the doctor and that sort of stuff. So it was quite confusing initially, but really different. So in the first school that I worked in, a lot of the kids came from low socioeconomic backgrounds, living off kind of one family income kind of thing. They'd have maybe all up 6 siblings, and you can imagine living in Auckland off one income, so quite low socioeconomic backgrounds. Worked down in Te Maioha or Parikarangi, so that's down in Rotorua. So at this stage I'd been school nursing for about 4 years, and I'd been throwing all these different sort of curveballs, and I kind of felt like I'd reached my max in a school, and then this opportunity popped up working in a youth justice facility, and I thought, well, this could be a chance to kind of challenge myself. The most difficult part, I think, was that initial kind of, once I started there, almost not being taken seriously. As a nurse, I'd gone from working in schools where, like me and the kids had quite a good mutual level of respect, and, you'd have that kind of, just that kind of respect, going to somewhere, where you were just almost seen as an object. And so those first kind of few months were quite difficult. That was probably the hardest part. Basically it was just, you were just very objectified as a woman, you were just kind of a piece of meat, just the things that would come out of their mouths. So a lot of them would be in there for obviously crimes that they'd done, so a lot of things like aggravated robbery, stealing cars, drug use and stuff. But I mean, for a lot of those boys, they would have big kind of psych reports done on them, and right back to the beginning of when their mother was pregnant with them. So I don't know how these psychologists managed to do this, but they get all this information, and it would be right back from when the mother was pregnant with them. So what kind of pregnancy did they have? So was it, drug, was there drug abuse, alcohol abuse, that sort of stuff, right up to the point that they got to us. And you'd read these reports, they take you about an hour to read, and it's just these such traumatic childhoods that it's just, no wonder you're here. Like you almost don't even blame them. So this one boy, he'd done his 6 months there, he was like top of the class, all this sort of stuff, doing really, really well. And it came to the end of his sentence, and he got really high praises. And he was let out, he got released, and he was back within 7 hours with another 6-month charge. And you'd kind of think, well, why would you do that, And I remember he was asked this, and he said, well, when I'm here I have a roof over my head, I have food in my stomach, I have a bed to sleep in, and I have people that care about me, and I get to go to school, which is a lot better than the life I have. And that's the case for a lot of those boys, is that place is more of a home than what they actually have out in the real world. So yeah, okay, they don't have their freedom, but they have everything else. Yeah, so this kid, when I left, like the day that I left, he organised like for all these boys to do a haka for me, and I mean, I just think that's so beautiful, you know. And then anyway, he made this canvas, and I just think it is just so beautiful. Not even just the fact that it's this, but like the fact he actually went through the effort. You know, this person who's meant to be this complete monster went through the effort to do this for me, you know, like actually spelt my name right, you know, all this sort of stuff. A lot of people spell my name wrong. After being in YJ and just kind of seeing there's just so much missing there as well, like for our kids that do their time there, where do they go afterwards? Like, why don't we have something more there for them? Like, yeah, they have some remand homes and stuff, but I still think we're really missing a lot of things in our youth, for our youth in New Zealand. Working up in the low decile schools, that itself is heartbreaking, and you realise how lucky you are, but then at least in those situations, you know, yeah, okay, these kids come from quite, you know, poor families and stuff like that, but they still have one or two things going for them. You know, they're doing really well at school, or they've got sport, or they've got something, you know, there's still one thing. Whereas a lot of these boys down there, it's really hard to kind of find something, you know, and that it's actually just really heartbreaking that for a lot of these kids, they have no one. It was actually quite a hard decision to leave, but for me, I felt as a nurse I wasn't doing enough. So this is kind of the turning point for me, is back in November. So I'd been down there about 5 months, and I came back up to Auckland to go to my old high school, the school that I worked at, their senior prize giving. I got asked to go, so I thought I'll come up and watch. And there was this year 12 boy, and he, I had worked with him since he was a year 8, and he'd had a really tough time, really struggling with drugs and alcohol. His dad had died, just a lot of social issues, you know, and he did spend time in the principal's office and all this sort of stuff, but he was also trying really hard. And I used to help him a lot, and he got made a prefect for the following year, and he came up to me as soon as prize giving finished, and he gave me this big hug, and he goes, you know, like, Miss, I couldn't have done that without you. And for me, that kind of just clicked in my head. I was kind of just like, I can do more in a high school than I can do in a youth justice facility, meaning that, you know, I get more time with him at school. Like, I'd worked with that boy since he was year 8 and now he's year 12, whereas with these kids in YJ, we might get, you know, maybe 3 to 6 months with them, and you do all this intense work and then they go right back to where they've come from. In the schools, I'm working at the top of the cliff, stopping these kids, whereas in YJ, I'm just the ambulance at the bottom. So I did that for a few months, and then yeah, my old job came back up, and I just loved that job so much, and yeah, so I decided to go back to Marcelin. So the school that I work at the moment is a Decile 2 school. It's a co-ed Catholic school. It's predominantly made up of Pacific Island, Māori, and I think with mainly Filipino, with a small amount of New Zealand European. So again, low socioeconomic background, quite high needs in regards to mental health, but also access to medical care. So quite a normal thing for me. So for example, we've already got about 4 kids there with rheumatic fever. So that's a third world disease. New Zealand shouldn't have that, but we do. And that's due to having strep throat, and it's not being treated. And a lot of the time, the reason these kids will get strep throat is because they're in overcrowded houses or like wet, damp conditions. And there's also a lot of mental health issues. So a big part of my role, part of my contract is I have to see every single year 9 in the whole school, and I have to do what's called a heads assessment. So a heads assessment is basically like a big psych assessment, but it's also a chance to screen for any sort of sexual abuse. We kind of just do a big summary at the end, and we kind of outweigh their risk factors with their protective factors, and then we will decide whether, so for me, will I refer to counsellors, what do I do from there? And we're really lucky at the school that I work at, as we are funded for a school-based health psychologist. you know, I thought originally when I started nursing, I was like, maybe this isn't for me. You know, being a nurse, I was like, oh, this is a bit rubbish, you know, it's a bit hard. But I never actually thought I would be 100% happy in work that I did. I thought, you know, I wouldn't be happy until I won lotto and, you know, never had to work again. But working with youth is 100% like what I'm supposed to be doing, and I genuinely love what I do. Like, I love the kids that I work with, and I have a lot of job satisfaction to the point where money doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, being a nurse, it doesn't matter. It's so worth it. Yeah. I love being able to help kids and just kind of show them that there's, you know, lots of people out there that care about them, you know? Yeah, definitely.
Since you met me at